That topic is literacy. Can my child read? Literacy is essentially a basic building block of education. If you can't read, then you can't pass an ELA. You can't pass any math tests. You're pretty much set up for not being successful. So we're here to really talk about what challenges we face as parents, as community, and what challenges children may face when it comes to reading and their literacy rates. But before we get started, I would like to introduce you all to the President and CEO of RISE Indy, Jasmine Shahid Young.
Thank you, Alexander, and thank you all for being here. Welcome to RISE+Shine. At RISE, we believe that social justice begins with education equity, and with that begins with equity and literacy. I am Jasmine Shahid Young, President and CEO of RISE Indy, and I launched RISE in 2019 as a mother of 3 kids that will advocate to no end to ensure that my kids have the best environment for learning that is allowing them to be set up for success, that they can truly reach their highest potential, and they can be contributing members of society. And I believe that's important and a necessary part of all public schools. The public school system should be ensuring that that is possible for all Indianapolis students. At RISE, we believe our vision is that every Indianapolis resident is engaged in improving our public education system. And our public education is not truly serving our kids, all students, really well. Currently in Indianapolis, we have 3 out of 10 10th graders that can actually read and comprehend at grade level. So that's not truly setting up our students to truly be successful and to reach their highest potential. We believe that in order to really allow all Indianapolis residents to be engaged in this fight for students within our public education system, we truly have to equip them with the information and knowledge and education of what is currently happening in our system, so we can all be a part of advocating for students, whether that's parents at the school level, teachers at the school level, grandparents at the school level, the school board level, our community, and even as far as at the State House. So we are so appreciative to have you here as the first step in getting the information so you can actually start to advocate in your own communities. So happy that we're joined here with an incredible panel, elected officials, a representative from the district. I also want to thank Martin University for partnering with us on this really important topic. And I also want to recognize our team that is here. We are a small team, but that does not mean that we are not pushing for huge impact. Alexander Dorinde mentioned himself. He is our lead parent organizer. Lily Brown, who's in the back, is our communications manager. And you saw Jasmine Jackson when he first came in, and she's our senior policy director. So thank you so much. I hope this is not the last time you engage with RISE, and look forward to continuing the connection.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And as Jasmine mentioned, we do have some elected officials in the building today, so we'd like to take some time to acknowledge them. We'll start by acknowledging Mr. Counselor William Duke Oliver himself. Thank you. All right, we also have City County Councilor John Vars. Councilor Vars, would you mind saying a few words for us today?
Yeah, good morning. Just really quickly, I would like to welcome everyone here this morning and thank RISE for their leadership in putting this together. John Bard, to represent District 7. District 7 is on the south, 30th Street, on the north, 71st Street, on the east, College, and on the west, Michigan. So it's a big district with a lot of diversity. It's my honor and privilege to represent it. Something that I'm passionate about personally in my personal life is literacy. It matters to me very much. I try to live that out in what I do in the community. So I'm pleased to have Indy Reads here. I'm on the board of Indy Reads. I'm on that board specifically because I care very much about its goal and its mission of making sure that Indianapolis becomes 100% literate. If there's anything that holds people back, it's being concerned about their literacy or not being able to engage fully in the community because their literacy isn't where they want it to be. So focusing on that topic today is really important to me. Please, Indy Reese is on the board, it's on the panel today, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being here and hearing the whole conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councilman Vars. Next, we have a Vice President of the City County Council himself, Mr. Zach Adamson.
Thanks, Alexander. Thanks also to Jasmine, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. And thank you to RISE for having me here today. I am Zach Adamson, the Vice President of the City Council and City Council Counselor for District 17, where we stand today. So thank you all for being here in District 17. Literacy is such an important component of societal life. It is something that I believe wholeheartedly, and I believe is a condition to a lot of the things that we deal with here in Indianapolis, from economic vitality to the violence rates that we see in our city. Frederick Douglass used to often credit his ability to read as a foundational, fundamental pathway that he found on his way to escaping slavery. And every day, young people struggle with those same conditions. We see literacy having those kind of effects on them. So literacy is such an important component of that, and I'm really excited to be here, really excited for RISE to play such an important role in advancing literacy in our city, and I'm glad to be a part. So thank you all for being here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, next I'd like to introduce the President of the IPS School Board of Commissioners, Mr. Evan Hawkins.
Good morning. Thank you again. Thank you to RISE, Indy, for the invitation and opportunity to be here. My name is Evan Hawkins. I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving on the IPS School Board, District 3. I'm not going to go through the directions and corners and all that good stuff, but District 3 for the district, I've been on the board since 18. So again, on behalf of the board, just so thankful to be here. I also want to thank Martin University for hosting this conversation. And I think from an IPS perspective and a community perspective, it's very sobering when you think about the fact that 1 in 6 African-American students in grades 3 through 8 are reading and writing on grade level, as per the 2021 iLearn assessment. 1 in 4 Latino students reading and writing on grade level. Is incredibly sobering. And so this conversation is critical right now. This conversation is about justice, it's about equity. So I'm highly encouraged by the work that Dr. Morgan from IPS and his team are implementing, whether it be new curriculum that has now, I think it's been about 10 years since we've had new curriculum in ELA, as well as critical conversations that are taking place in our community right now. And so I would encourage this group to please plug in to myips.org, our Rebuilding Stronger campaign. We're dealing with major constraints. We're dealing with outcome challenges for Black and brown students. We're dealing with the ramifications of a global pandemic that we're not out of yet, as well as long-term sustainability challenges. And what we believe is now the time to have a conversation, put our stake in the ground, and implement a plan going forward that can ensure that all children, so we can eliminate these gaps that we're seeing in our community. So I would say that I'm humbled, honored, privileged to be here today, and I can't wait to learn. I'm taking notes from this panel. But our challenges are big, again, so I just want to thank you all and RISE Indy for hosting this conversation, and so thankful to be here today.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hawkins. Next we want to get into this data that you've heard about. Commissioner Hawkins, Jasmine, a few of the city county councilors actually hit on these literacy data points. So I want to invite Lily Brown to come and run you through that data just a bit.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, you're going to see me running around taking pictures all day, so I'm in some strange spots. So I just want to walk you through, we have limited time, so I just want to walk you through the sheet that you got when you walked in. It's going to look something like this. So we're going to go through 3 different pieces of data here. We've got information from iRead, which is the 3rd grade literacy test. We have information from iLearn, which measures literacy from 3rd grade through 8th grade. And then we have literacy tests from iStep, which is 10th grade. So you'll see that on your sheet. What I do want to note before you look through it is that these scores are going to be way higher. This proficiency is way higher. It is testing basic reading skills. more rigorous. So we're seeing a huge differential here in proficiency levels. I also want to note that these are just the, I'm out of breath, oh my goodness. I just want to note that these are the proficiency percentages for only Black and Hispanic students. I encourage you to go check out the data for low-income students, for students with disabilities, for students who English is not their first language. These are also very sobering results. There are more sources on the bottom of your sheet, and then on the other side of your sheet are some tips and tricks from former teachers on how you can support literacy for the students in your lives. We good? Are we ready? Okay, then I want to hand it back over to Alexander to get our panel discussion started.
All right, thank you so much, Lily. So we'd like to introduce our panel. I'll introduce them in the order as they show up on your program. So I'll start with Dr. Terri Jett, who's a professor at Butler University. Dr. Jett, thank you so much for joining us here today. We've got Angelia Moore, VP of Programming at the Martin Christian Center, but today as she sits on this panel, she's sitting here as a parent. We also have Kathleen Rauth, Media Specialist from CFI 2, IPS School number 2, who was also the 2018 IPS School Teacher of the Year, we have Christina Binhack, Binhack, VP of Programming from RISE+, and Emily Masengale, the founding principal from Waterhouse. Thank you so much. Please help me. All right, so now we get to the fun part, to where we really get to pick their minds. And where I really want to start, I want to start with Dr. Jett. Would like to know a little bit more about how literacy plays a role in your current work.
Well, literacy is key to the work that I do. I'm a college professor. I also run what's called a hub for Black Affairs and Community Engagement on Proulx University, which is really centered on the life of Black faculty, staff, and students kind of working and networking together, using their intellectual capacity and ability to transform the institution and the community. Literacy is key, and there are different types of literacy. So I'll just talk about a few of them. There's financial literacy. Of course, you have some understanding of that to navigate the college environment. There's media literacy. You need to be aware of the way media presents various communities, various issues, whether or not it's relevant or actually accurate. You also just, we're talking about literacy, just the ability to read. You need that because you have to do a lot of writing. And if you don't read, you can't write. It's naturally connected. And it's important to really emphasize that to children in particular, because, and also to college students, quite frankly, which is my main population that I engage with. I can tell when they write something for me if they haven't read or if they don't read, because their ability to put words together, to put sentences, paragraphs, to make natural transitions from one issue to another is challenged if they're not reading. And not just reading the material that I provide for them, but if they have a reading kind of interest, if they read on their own, if they have just a natural love of learning, it's quite obvious. And I can tell the difference. And so it's critical. And when we're talking about it from a justice perspective, it's even more critical that you have an understanding of your place in the world and the way that the institutions and systems are affecting your own life. And you can only have a sense of that if you read, and if you understand, and if you have a level of discernment in terms of what you read. It's not just about reading anything. It's about reading and understanding and having the ability to analyze what you're looking at, and to think very critically about what's being presented for you. And so I actually have some challenges with regard to testing, but I think we can get into that a little bit later, because I don't think testing actually really tests your ability to be a literate person. So we can talk about that a little bit later.
Thank you, Dr. Jett. Yeah, I definitely understand where you come from. One thing you hit on was just these systematic challenges, and that leads me to Ms. Roth. We talked earlier, you are a media specialist. In layman's terms, you're the school librarian. So I would like to learn a little bit more about the challenges that you face within the school. And then earlier today, you had actually shared some data with me, and I would love it if you could share that data with the group as well.
All right, welcome. I'm not good with formals. Yes, as you said, I'm a media specialist, aka librarian, at the Center for Inquiry 2 downtown. If you don't know where that's located, we're an international baccalaureate magnet program that is part of the IPS schools. Yes, libraries and literacy. It seems like it's a no-brainer. The two would go together. It is a no-brainer that the two go together. But we are finding, especially in IPS and, to be honest, across the United States, not just within our own district, a loss of librarians and media specialists across the country. In our own district, what we're seeing, I just ran some numbers the last couple of days, and we have over 25 schools that haven't circulated even 0 to 200 books in the last year and a half. 25. Now, I'm not talking about our innovation schools, I'm talking about the core IPS schools. And you add another 7 schools to that, and it's under 500 books. So, you know, what does that mean to your children as readers? It does not mean that they don't have access to books. They do have classroom libraries, they have other resources, but if no one is running those libraries, and if no one is cultivating those collections, and no one is putting a mind to what those children want and need and deserve in terms of equitable stories, narratives, text, representing every experience, not just certain experiences of communities of color, then those children can become disengaged with the aspect of reading. They don't want to read because it has no value to them. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a really wonderful quote where he talks about the classroom was not, he had to learn what was not connected to him, but that the library was a place where he could pursue endlessly those things which were of interest to him. And that is the, to my mind, the most important thing that a media specialist can do. I want them to be excited about reading. I want them to see themselves in the narratives. I want them to recognize that they are literate humans that deserve everything. And to give you an example, to go from those 25 schools that have 0 checkouts, my school had 11,500. That has to do with having a licensed media specialist full-time with a very conscientious effort to build an equitable collection. And those numbers have grown over time so that my kids come and they can ask, we didn't mention gender diversity in this, but I think that's also an important part of this discussion. My school, we have a lot of gender diverse students, and they can come and ask for narratives of any kind related to that, and maybe they'll find it in my library. It's imperative that we have narratives for our kids, that they can see themselves, but also dream themselves. Justine Ireland says that lack of access to culturally relevant literature is an apartheid of imagination. And I think that's a very powerful statement to consider. That if you do not see yourself in what you read, if you cannot vision yourself in what you read, and quite frankly, you know, as one of the white people sitting on this panel, if white students can't see people of color in every possible role, then how can you imagine that in your own life? How do you vision that? How does that increase your imagination? And how does it empower you to reach out and make those connections? So, to my mind, access to diverse narratives is, quite frankly, a civil right as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much. Now, one thing that I heard was you stressing the importance of actually having media specialists at every school. So what I want to do is I want to flip it to you, Angelia. My first question to you is, does your child's school have a media specialist? And if yes, Can you kind of divulge on what that means for your child's literacy from your parent perspective?
So, we have 4 children. The last one is still in school, and so we do have media specialists, and there's an active effort. There's an active effort to make sure that the books that are in the library represent the students that are in the building. There are books that are in the library that are diverse in language and identity. I have a young black boy, and so there's books that are specifically for him. But what we did as parents is we build libraries for each of them that were based on the things that they desire. And so it's imperative that they read outside of their normal genre. So we challenge them, even our young adult children, we challenge them to read one thing a year that's not on their normal recommendations, the things that they would normally read. So I have one that's like a huge football fan. And so we had him read something on social and emotional learning and what that means to his younger brother. And so I think the school does a great job of trying to identify as many books as possible, but I think when I find books, I share those books. And so I think it's also important for us to help schools identify those things and making sure that those things that you challenge your children with, or things that you feel your children should be challenged with, are represented in the school and in the library for others to enjoy.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'm starting to hear a resounding message from everything that you all are talking about. And the thing that's coming to me is access, especially when it's in the school. It's great to have access to the schools. COVID has thrown things off over the last year or so. So, Emily, I would like to know from your perspective as an educator, how is COVID, what have you seen COVID do to literacy? And do you know of any free online programs or anything of that nature that students can engage with if they don't have that regular access to a library?
Yes, I work with Crystal House Schools, which are charter schools in Indianapolis, and we have an innovation school partnership at our South Campus with IPS as well. And Doors is unique. It's an adult high school for students 18 and older that want to work towards our high school diploma instead of a GED. And pre-COVID, we saw major literacy concerns with our native English-speaking students coming in on the average 5th grade level of reading. So pre-COVID, this was a huge hill for them. It was a huge struggle. And what we know is that those adult students have children. And so they're helping their kids with homework, and they're encouraging their students to embrace literacy. And we know that if they go forward and they get their high school diploma, their child is 50% more likely to also have their high school diploma. So we have really been attacking literacy, and after COVID, we have seen a huge hit on that. There was a Credo study out of Stanford after the first hiatus from COVID, after just that first quarter when kids were out of school, and their study showed that across 19 states, students lost about a year growth in literacy, and that was when we were out for 1 quarter. And then we consider last year when we were ping-ponging back and forth, we were in school, we were out of school, we were hybrid. So those results have compounded, and our scores and our studies from the Department of Education have shown that. And to echo what some of the panelists have mentioned, and I think in particular to our elected officials, I think we have to pay very close attention to the fact that our Black and Hispanic students, and our ELL students, and our special education students, and our students who receive free and reduced lunch were hit most significantly. We cannot just keep saying that. We'll say that every year. Schools say we want to serve Black children, and there's not results. So what I really encourage our community members is to engage with your school and ask them, what are you doing to get those results? A few things that we're doing that schools could look into is we have a shared system with the Marion County Public Library. At each of our schools, our media specialists, all of the books are in rotation with the library. That helps us to make sure that we have a culturally diverse list of books, but also if we don't have something that a student is interested in, they can request it. If it's in circulation at any Marion County Public Library, they can send that for free to the students or to the teachers to check out. So that is a great partnership to just increase that access, because we do know there are budgets and constraints that sometimes can get in the way of things. Also, kind of outside the box things, we have a therapy dog that goes to our elementary schools. And so our shy readers or our struggling readers, it can be very discouraging to read out loud in class. But the dog can go around and can be a reading buddy, and the dog is not going to laugh at you or say anything back. And so it's really comforting for some of the students who need that practice out loud. Because we know that that is a strategy that's really helpful for children, but it takes away that anxiety piece. Because with social-emotional learning, sometimes in class, practices that we think are helping the student increase their literacy and reading skills can actually really cause some emotional responses that prevent them from growing the way we want them to. A few resources, I have them written down. Are readworks.org. This has passages and questions that are great for nonfiction. There is a website called Read, Write, Think. It has printable resources for reading and writing. PBS Kids has really good resources. Lots of them are fun and interactive, but they have some really great literacy resources. www.freereadingprogram.com. www.teachyourmonstertoread.com. That's free if it is on a computer. Storylineonline.net is people reading stories, so you can hear a read aloud if there's no one to read aloud to the child. And lalilo.com/language is in a science reading group. And one study that we have recently done also is the importance of reading historical context of social sciences and science. Oftentimes we focus just on reading for literacy, and that does not help the students understand the context from other content areas. So there's content knowledge that sometimes on tests, I have comments as Dr. Jett does as well, but sometimes on tests when we are testing literacy or English skills, there actually might be a content gap in the science-based question that's asking. So it's really important that we're incorporating reading in science and social studies as well, and not just again as a subject for reading and literacy.
Thanks so much, Emily. And you actually wrote quite a bit in there, take quite a few ways, but I think the pop board in school conversation, I would be doing that. But my next question is actually for you, Christina. We talked about access to books, but I think we should focus a little bit on what we as parents or maybe guardians or family members, cousins, whatnot, what we can do to assist with reading and literacy with the children in our lives. Would you mind if I go through that?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. I always like to think the best is leading by example. One of the #1 goals that our adult learners come to us is, I want to improve my own education and reading level so I can help my children with their homework. I can go talk to their parents at parent-teacher conferences and understand and engage and find those resources and understand how to use them. So by joining adult education programs like our own, like Emily's here and many other providers across the state, really, there's one usually within every single county, and they're all 100% free. So we have tuition-free classes. Earning your high school equivalency diploma is the new GED. If you have not heard that yet, it's HSC now. English as a second language, job certifications, earning that credential. Post-secondary is expensive. I know, I have too many student loans to count. And if I would have known there were alternative options and that wasn't pushed on me, there are amazing job certifications, integrated education trainings, earning your CNA. We have a customer service certification, which is really applicable to any industry. So just taking those steps forward to improve your own education level, the children follow suit. They are sponges. They soak in everything around them. They see what you're doing and see, oh, if you can do that, I can do that too. Because we see that if a parent in a family has a low literacy level, it's 72% more likely that the child also will have low literacy challenges throughout their school. So the sooner that the parent can break that cycle, this down the road, that ripple effect in the entire family, we see huge effects. So I think having that patience and confidence in yourself and asking for that help, there unfortunately is a stigma in our society that being illiterate as an adult is bad, is that it's shameful, and it is not at all. We found that throughout our educational history, they've tried many different ways to approach teaching reading throughout school. Seems like every decade a different approach is trying. Let's try 5s. Let's try sight words. really needing an integrative approach. So getting as many sensories in it as possible, seeing the letters, understanding their sounds. What happens when you put them together? There's always tricks. Reading is hard. Our brains are actually wired for speech. At one point in our history, somebody decided, let's draw a picture, call it a letter, and let's have everybody follow the same rule. That's actually not storytelling, was the way that we passed along knowledge in our history of every ancestral trail. So now that we find we have to do literacy, it's actually not wired that way, and every person learns differently. So that's why reading is one of the hardest subjects to teach in school, because one approach is not going to work for every single student in that classroom. So we, at the adult education level in RISE, we really do an integrative approach. In every lesson plan, we try a little bit of everything. And once we find what works for that student, we hone in on it and say, this is your individualized lesson plan. And we're going to follow this trail. We're going to build that foundation so that way you're not, otherwise it's like building a house on sand. You can't do it. You have to find the root issue for you as a person. How is your brain actually understanding the letters? How are you comprehending them? And then that's how you, as a unique individual, are going to learn. And I think that can be replicated at home with your children. Get to know them. Sit down and just read through their homework. See what you understand. We even have some of our students bring their concepts, hey, my kid is studying this in school. Can we maybe study it too? Because most of the time, it connects to what they need to know for their HSC anyway. So we encourage our students to bring those topics to their lesson plans. And then if they can understand it, then they're helping their child. And you see the whole family unit become closer and breaking that cycle of low literacy and poverty at home.
Thank you so much. All right, so in closing, I want to ask you all the same question. It is really focused on the organizations that you work with professionally. The literacy gaps that you see in your day-to-day professional work, and you speak a little bit more on those, speak a little bit on it, and then let us know how we as a community can be engaged to help and be a part of being involved in improving these things for you professionally.
You just want me to keep going?
Absolutely.
So to get involved with us, we really try to get the diverse community involved and get different people from different circles working together on literacy. So we have amazing volunteer tutor programs. It's also a great way if you also want to work with your kids at home. Maybe you do have your high school diploma, post-secondary, but maybe it's been a few years. I don't know about you, if somebody asked me to teach slow flying intercepts to a teenager right now, I would have no idea, right? So there are ways that you can get involved in literacy programs and become a tutor for other adults with us, and that also helps your own tutoring skills for maybe at home with your family. So that's one way you can think about it. For our organization specifically, we have an amazing volunteer training program for tutors. We make sure you get all the training you need and refresh that training as much as possible. But really just, again, I go back to leading by example, taking your students to programs. So our bookstore will be reopening this fall. We're very excited in Fountain Square. Come see us once we're open. And we are planning to do a lot more 2-gen literacy programming in that store. We have children's books for $1, pay what you can cards. So coming and hearing about local authors, hearing community center speakers, we also bring in therapy dogs. They're fantastic. Where you can bring your kid to a store and actually read from the books to those dogs. So I think just finding community events, there are so many free things. Indianapolis is a very welcoming, open city. And I think just getting your family out there and attending those events as much as you can is just that first step. Getting them outside, interacting with the community, finding those resources, because they definitely are out there.
Thank you.
I serve at Edmond Christian Center, and we are right here in 4628. So we have seen the gap. But one of the biggest things that we're doing is helping our children help other children. And so when we talk about reading out loud, we give them 1 and 2-year-old to read, we go into the toddlers. It is imperative so that they can just learn to be comfortable with reading aloud. And one of the ways that you can definitely support us is every year we do a read-in week, and we have different community connections come in and simply read to our children or listen to our children read. And I'm a huge advocate. We talked about the connection between reading and writing. We also have our children tell us their story, and then we're in the process of helping them write that story so that they can be published. It's imperative that they know that they are not just here, but they can look up their names and see their names in something that is positive. So we know that we have a high crime rate, we have things that are negatively impacting them, so we want to really push them to be published authors. So we help them first verbalize their story, and then we help them put that together. We have some students who are artists, and we have them help draw pictures so that we can get those published. So there's many ways to participate. You can be an editor, but our goal is to get the majority of our 300 students published and have their names listed somewhere that shows that they are great and that they are impacting other around.
First off, if you know any adults 18 or older that don't have that high school diploma, really encourage them to look into a diploma program like Crystal House or Indy Reads, because as Christina mentioned, that literacy rate will jump for their kids and also the child's likelihood of graduating high school. So that's a really good first step. We all know somebody that either doesn't have their diploma or that might go to church with or work with or live by folks that might be of interest to these career programs. Also, we are attacking this on a two-pronged approach. So we are looking at the remediation of those foundational skills, but it's also really important to look at that acceleration so that we are not saying, well, the last real year of school that the fourth graders had was second grade, so we're teaching them second grade standards. We can't do that. And there are also studies that have shown historically that students are behind grade level in reading if we only give them that lower level of reading materials. We are preventing them from growing. So do not deny the child access of fifth grade reading materials on grade level if we know they're behind grade level in reading. We need them to be challenged. That might be someone reading to them, but they need to be able to interact with that grade level content. So they can quickly catch up, but sometimes we say, oh wait, this person's behind, they need to look at this first grade text and that's all we give them, and they don't have the opportunity to grow on their own. So make sure that we're not actually being the barrier that's in the way when we reach that grade level of children.
Okay, I'm going to speak directly to the question about where do I see literacy gaps. And I teach an interesting group of young people at Butler University because the university is predominantly white. There's some fairly wealthy students there. I do teach a number of black students just based on the classes that I teach. I teach a class on Alice Walker. I teach black political thought. I teach racial and ethnic politics. Right now I'm teaching an activism class. And where I actually see, I'm going to speak to kind of what Kathleen mentioned, because where I see literacy gaps is in some of the ignorant things that people bring into the classroom, especially with regard to an understanding of their own communities, or understanding of their own culture, or of history. And I question what they really are reading before they get to college, because they have no real critical understanding of some basic historical things that they should know, like the civil rights movement that wasn't even that long ago. They don't have a full understanding of the Constitution. They don't know what the Bill of Rights are. And if we're talking about justice, these are things that they really need to know. They need to know about social movements. They need to know about how change actually occurs. They need to have an understanding of what people did before them. And they also need to be empowered. I see that in so many black children, that they have not received the lessons and the history and the knowledge about the great people that came before them. They haven't read Alice Walker, they haven't read Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. I can go on and on. And so what I really think needs to happen, especially for families, is that, and this is what happened with me, is that my family actually provided the knowledge and the understanding of my own people that I needed to succeed. And it didn't necessarily come from the libraries either, because the libraries do not always have the material in those collections that they need to. The Indianapolis Public Library actually does not have black people selecting those collections that actually circulate through the 24 libraries. And I know that because I was on the Indianapolis Public Library board until I was kicked off for being too radical. So I think that you really need to hold these public institutions really responsible
responsible and hold them accountable for not just providing material, but for providing relevant material. And by the way, who is actually teaching these students in the classroom? I really have questions about the diverse teachers that are standing in those classrooms teaching those Black and brown children. I've looked at the other statistics that aren't provided in terms of the staff. Who's staffing there? Why is that? Why aren't there enough Black teachers in these predominantly Black schools? And why aren't there Black teachers in predominantly white schools either? Because they need to be there also. Because kind of what Kathleen's saying. These children need to have diverse representation. That's where the literacy gap is. No relevant understanding of the backgrounds and history, the successes of different cultures, especially with regard to the systems and the institutions and things that people have been up against in this country. So that's what I see kind of in my day-to-day work, just different things that come up in the classroom with very literate young people, but not really having the critical understanding and knowledge that they need to have to be successful and to actually really interact in a really successful way with various people.
So much has just been said there. There's a lot to think about. The lack of Black teachers and rolling back into the lack of educational opportunities, which allows those people who want to be in education programs not to be able to pursue that. And there's a long chain that gets us into the situation where we have predominantly white teachers teaching across the United States to what is now over 50% of our students in the United States are children of color. So there is a profound issue in how we get any teachers of color, how do we support them as they move through the education system so that they then can become those empowering educators. And consequently, white educators need to wake up. And they need to recognize that over 50% of their students are not of their race. And that we are here to teach every child, and we are here to teach every child about everybody. And if your own knowledge is missing, then you sure better go get it filled in, which is what I continue to do. I will never stop doing that, because I will never fully understand. But I can keep asking and asking and reading and reading. And if your teachers are not doing that, if you don't feel comfortable that your teachers are part of that process of getting themselves elevated and aware, then I think you should be talking to them about it. I think you should be talking to your administration saying, what's happening here? Why are my kids' teachers not aware of this? Why are they not participating in this? There's a racial equity initiative at IPS. Every teacher has gone through racial equity training. Now, 3 days is a start, but as you said, it's far from the journey. What it is, hopefully, is a light turning on for a lot of people. But as to resources, hey, ask your librarian. If you got a librarian, ask us. That's our job, right? I send out resources to parents every single week in the newsletter. I keep culturally diverse lists of books for every single grade level: young adult, nonfiction, picture books, biographies, digital resources, and I did send those to you guys. I don't know if they got published or printed or not, but so when someone comes to me and they say, I need a book about a Hispanic architect, then I can go and I can find that information, right? I'm going to make that happen, and if I don't have it, I'm going to connect you to those resources. If you don't have a school librarian, then talk to your public librarian. IPS has wonderful partnerships with NUPL. They are part of a partnership with a grant called Roots to Read, which is going to be wrapping up this year, which is providing media specialists and parent coordinators and other support staff. And those schools, many of them who are in communities that are 90% plus children of color, they're seeing high circulation rates of books because they have knowledgeable people getting appropriate resources into the hands of the kids. I would like to also call out Planner House, because Planner House is doing some amazing work around literacy right now. They've opened up a whole new book center and community center in addition to their restaurant and their garden and all the amazing things that they are doing, they have something going almost every single night. They've got a speaker or a presentation or music or connect with Waterhouse if you're interested in what's happening in this community from the community. These are people from within our community that are doing this work. And I also would, I don't want to push back on a previous statement, but I want to augment a previous statement. Absolutely, we push kids to be the highest they possibly could be. But if your child is not there yet, then meet them where they are and give them enriching material that will continue to elevate them to where we want them to be. I see so many kids that disconnect by middle school because academically they're at second, third grade in terms of their literacy skills. And so as the content becomes harder, they begin to shut down because they simply don't have what they need, right? So you can help them with that. You can help them, and your librarian can help you do that. Your teacher should help you do that. Where are the narratives about African American history that might be in picture before we start? And then where can we go after that to start elevating? You know, I want to reach the heights, but I also don't want kids discouraged and disconnecting because they don't have those skills yet. So we really need to meet them where they are. And you know, continue to look out at your community organizations. There's some amazing representatives here who are doing great work in reaching out to the community to help. But you know, I have to say as an IPS person, talk to your teachers, talk to your administrators, talk to your fellow parents. You know, start book groups, have parent book groups. You know, come together as readers. When I was at CFI 27, where Mrs. Moore, two of her kids were there, and I was media specialist there at one point. And we had a Real Men Read book group. And it was our African American boys in middle school and their significant male figure, whoever that was. And if they didn't have somebody, then our behavior facilitator was an amazing, Warren Clinton, an amazing gentleman. He jumped into that role. And we had dinner, and we read, and we talked books. And, you know, those boys became readers, right? As we modeled how to talk books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to cut you off. But thank you so much. I mean, I think that this panel has brought a lot of great content. I hope that you all learned something today. I hope that it sparked something within you to support the literacy rates of the children in your life and the children in the community. We're going to kind of break out into a few sessions. We're going to have some breakout sessions here really quickly, but before we do that, we'd like to call Dr. Warren Morgan from IPS up to share a few words with us.
Thank you, and I won't take too much of your time because the important part of this meeting is actually hearing from you guys and really making sure that we get your input and feedback. But I feel very fortunate to be here and to listen and learn. And I really thank you for everyone on the panel. Just so many great insights. So as you heard, I'm Warren Morgan. I'm the Chief Academic Officer with Indianapolis Public Schools. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing and the work that we're doing specifically around literacy. But before starting that, this meeting just reminds me of a saying that is passed around one of the most accomplished tribes in Africa, the mighty Maasai. And what the saying is Kasedi Ngeta. And every time a Maasai warrior sees another Maasai warrior, they say Kasedi Ngeta, and that means, how are the children? And when you hear that, the response to that is always, all the children are well. And in that Maasai society, that means that they value their children's well-being, that there is peace and safety in protecting the young children in their community, and that they prioritize the well-being, the education of their young. And if I were to ask anybody here in Indianapolis, or even among us, how are the children? Do you think the response will be all the children are well? No. We see the negative statistics, we see the crime rates, we see all the different things, we see the literacy rates, all the things that are in front of us that will lead us to believe that children growing up in our community are not set up to do well. But I do want to give us some hope, because we are seeing some progress. Being here, yet alone, of all of these people and all the work that's really happening, this village, all of us coming together to really work hard on behalf of our children is one step. And I do want to share with you some data that we're seeing that is showing that things are slightly moving in the right direction, but not enough. So a couple of things we're seeing. Early indicators of our class of 2021, this class that just graduated, are showing significant progress from the graduating class that we saw in 2020. That data isn't released yet, but once it is, you'll see that there's some significant progress that our class of 2021 has made. Early indicators have also shown that our AWEA literacy rates in ELA, this round that our students just took coming back into school in September, has surpassed pre-pandemic rates slightly from 2019, before the pandemic. We're also seeing that student attendance rates are now back to pre-pandemic rates. So there's progress, and there's people who are working hard. We have educators in our buildings, we have school leaders that are doing this work to really make sure we're moving there. But when we say pre-pandemic rates, that's not the ceiling, that's not the goal, that's not the bar. Pre-pandemic is a lot of this results that you saw up here. It's not enough, particularly for our Black and brown kids. So there's more work we have to do. And so some of the work we're doing within IPS, specifically on the academic realm, is we're really trying to make sure that we bring coherence to the academics that we're doing within our system. Giving our school leaders and our teachers professional development. We partner with TNTP to make sure that no matter if your child goes to a choice school or just in a traditional neighborhood school, that their teacher is receiving professional development. We've also provided some individualized platforms where students are able to individually go in and supplement the Tier 1 instruction that is happening in their classroom. So Imagine Learning is one of the platforms we're using in ELA in our elementary buildings, and then we have a Chief 3000 at the secondary level. We're doing an SAT boot camp for our teachers this month. I say October, man, yeah, it's this month. On October 18th, we're doing the SAT boot camp because now SAT is the high stakes assessment that is required for all of our high school students to graduate. We have so many partnerships that we're doing with Indianapolis Public Library to make sure that we're getting them cards. We're about to do high dosage tutoring. So these are all the different things that we're really working on. But ways that you can really help us. One, we need to hear your voice. We need to know what is working, what isn't working. As we're about to launch this tutoring plan, we want to hear how can we best support and make tutoring work for your student. I also encourage that you read with your child. You heard from everyone on the panel, there's so many different resources. Read a book one night a week, or make sure your child is reading a book one night a week, or one book, or at least something every night, just to supplement what's happening in the classroom. It's not enough just to do this within the classroom. And then also make sure that they do have a library card, so they can go in and check out books. The other plug I want to do is if you have a graduating senior, or even a junior, the FAFSA is open now. So even if your child is not planning on going to college, we encourage you to complete the FAFSA. That is the first step for your child to get financial aid to go to college. So even if they don't plan on going, it's just really important that you fill out that FAFSA and get that early so that they are eligible to go to colleges. And there are many colleges, like you heard Dr. Jett saying, even schools like Butler, there's financial aid available and scholarships available for our Indianapolis public school kids to go to schools like Butler. So don't close it out, don't count it out. So that's all I want to let you guys know what we're doing here, but I'm mainly here to listen and hear from you, and I'm just grateful to be in this space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morgan. And as a crowd, can we all just thank the wonderful panel that we had here today?